As the COVID-19 epidemic is fast becoming a global menace, how can healthy populations be spared from infection? China has had a lot of first-hand experience in dealing with the outbreak, so what treatment works and what doesn't? Have advances been made in testing for the virus and in developing a vaccine? And how confident are we in preventing a pandemic? To talk about these and more, I'm joined by satellite by Dr. Yang Hongjun, co-chairman of the Precision Medicine Professional Committee at the Chinese Society of Biotechnology. And also we have Dr. Edward Y. Wang, an expert in industrialization of biomedicine. Joining us from Wuhan is Dr. Chen Yijian, Associate Chief Physician at Institute of Antibiotics of Huashan Hospital, and in Brussels, Johan Nates, a professor of virology at the University of Leuven. And that is our topic, Business Dialogue. I'm Zhou Yue. So let me start with you, Dr. Chen. You've been working in Wuhan from Huashan Hospital. Can you tell us what kind of work you've been involved in the battle against the novel coronavirus?
Yeah, it's it's a good question, and it's quite complicated because we know this disease is caused by virus, but all the drugs targeted on the virus is not so effective as we assumed. We call this just a storm on the horizon, and yes, this is because these medicines are just effective, shows good activity in vitro, but none of them showed strong evidence in the vivo. And so maybe we can see things through another perspective. Because this virus is destined to die, so we call this self-limited diseases. So we should focus on the patients, not the virus. Okay? Because for the mild or moderate patients, maybe the water is the best medication. So, but for the critical ill persons, the viruses can cause many organ disorders. So, such as heart failure, respiratory failure, such as renal function failure. So we used ventilators or ECMO to help patients breathe, or we used IBP to maintain their circulations, and we used CRT to support their renal functions or eliminate the inflammatory mediators. So when you support them, when they live through the virus attack, they will be fine. So that's a comprehensive treatment.
Some people estimate among the infected patients, 10% of them have severe symptoms, as you said. All those things you mentioned are still supportive care. Is there any antiviral medicines are working to improve the conditions of the patients who have severe symptoms?
As you know, I just call them antivirus drugs are just the storm on the horizon. It may be some drugs like remdesivir is potentially effective, but from now we will see it, but not for now. The drugs is not so effective as we assumed.
And of course, those Chinese doctors and nurses, they've been combating this COVID-19 epidemic for months. So you probably are the best equipped to tell the rest of the world what are the China experience in terms of dealing with this disease. What would you want to tell your colleagues around the world on how to treat those patients?
So we used all kinds of treatment to treat the patients. Like we have all kinds of equipment like ventilators, like IBTs, and also we have related medicines such as heparins to reduce the thrombosis, like this. Yeah, it's a comprehensive treatment.
And we also very sad to know that among the 3,000 infected medical doctors, several of them have already died of the disease. Could you please tell us why the medics are also exposed to the danger and what measures are being taken to protect them?
Yeah, because there is very risky procedures when we do any operations around the patient's head and faces, such as endotracheal intubation, aspiration of sputum, or replacing the ventilator's pipelines. It's especially when the patient is cough or vomiting, so a lot of virus aerosol is releasing. So this is the dangerous time for us medical staff to expose to all these virus aerosol. If you have not enough equipment, you will be exposed. So many medical staff were affected. And but now we have enough equipment. We have many types of equipment, very professional, like isolation gowns and protective clothing and goggles and disposable gloves, caps, and shoe covers, and so on. So, and also we have standard procedures to put on or take off them. I think that this procedure is more important.
And for those healthy communities in Wuhan and elsewhere, what do you think are the best ways for them to protect themselves to keep away from the virus?
Practice of good hygiene is very important. Often we wash your hands, especially before you're touching your face or after touching some latent pollutant. It's very important. And also you can wear this surgical mask. And be careful, because when you put your mask, you have to let the air breathe. When you're breathing, the air comes from the mask, not from any gap of the leak.
And I was told that
if you yeah.
I was told that the situation in Wuhan is much better than a month ago, and the load of your work has dropped. Can I say that things are improving in Wuhan?
Yes, things are improving, and fewer and fewer patients come to our ICU, and we focus on the patients now. But there is less patients that come and continuous come. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Chen. Thank you for your hard work, and please take good care of yourself. Now let's turn to Dr. Yang in Washington. So, Dr. Yang, actually people are wondering why we haven't been able to diagnose more suspected cases around the world. Are you satisfied with the testing kits that we have right now? Is it 100% accurate? It is efficient? It is fast enough?
I don't think so. I think this is a very difficult challenge. And when this virus came up, and we are not prepared to have the diagnostic kits, and until the sequencing data show up, then we can design the diagnostic kits to use the nucleic acid method to detect the virus sequence. And in that way, these kits, lots of factors to affect that accuracy and the issue is how do you sample, and how do you take the patient, in which period you take the samples, and the sample is the RNA amount is large enough, you can detect it. So all these questions to come up at the beginning, especially at the beginning, we even don't know how to sample these patients. So that's a problem. The diagnostic became a very obviously hurdle we needed to overcome.
And Dr. Yang,
I think
it seems now the prevalent methods is still to test the nucleic acid, the genetic sequence of the virus itself. Do you think it is feasible that we'll come up with better ways to detect those infections on the spot with quicker ways?
I think so. I think after a very short period, and not only to detect these the sequence and nucleic acid method, we also came up, I think I heard, it's not we, I think the scientists in China, they immediately developed detect the antibody and use the antigen to detect the antibody. So they have enough knowledge about this virus sequence data, then design to manufacturing the antibody, and then use the antibody to make we so-called POCT, point of care technology, to make these test strip, just like the test these pregnancy strip. So in that way, it's a very easy and very quick, and don't need any special training. Everyone can use that strip to test and how they came up the results. But on the other hand, also you need to notice that the strip is when you have the patient, if they invaded by these virus, not immediately to generate the antibody.
So all these methods are not 100% accurate. They have leeways of making mistakes.
Yeah, but now I think it's getting more and more accurate. And the other thing is combined with the clinical treatment. For example, use the CT to look at the patient's CT imaging. And that is another way to confirm whether you have the disease or not. And that's, I think it's very helpful. I think down the road is not only use the diagnostic nucleic acid testing kits and combine these clinical methodology. I think it's also very helpful and useful.
And the Chinese health authorities said that the novel coronavirus challenge is the biggest one in the history of the People's Republic. That means it is bigger than SARS and MERS, and those were also coronaviruses. How different is this novel coronavirus strain from those previous two, and why it make it more difficult to contain?
Yeah, this you know, if you look at the data of their sequencing data, you can find a lot of sequencing is similar to the SARS we met 17 years ago. However, this virus, they also have their special sequencing. Basically, it's a focus on the S protein, and that part is different from previously SARS sequencing. So when we generate the testing kits, you got to consider to put the different segment from the SARS sequencing and as well as this virus sequencing put together, so you can make sure what you test, you have the SARS sequencing and the symptom there, and you also have the new novel coronavirus sequencing there. So that also makes the testing is more accurate. And the other is that now the sampling the people to use these nasal pharyngeal swab, and that's basically the sample itself is quite messy. You have some sputum and something. You got to separate them. So that process is take a while to, to improve the process. And I think now we also need to use the standard procedure to operate that testing, and that's also helpful.
Professor Nates, I want you to join our discussions. Let's talk a little bit about the therapeutic response from the medical society to this new virus. A lot of people are saying why we don't have a very efficient antiviral drugs to cope with novel coronavirus.
Yeah, that's a good question, and would have made a big difference. So the reason is that we don't have it because typically coronaviruses cause, you have this coronavirus that cause mild disease, kind of a common cold. And so for a company, it's not worth the investment to make a drug against such mild infections. But the thing is that we had this wake-up call in 2003 with SARS, and then in 2012 with the MERS coronavirus, and these were quite nasty viruses. So I think human mankind should have realized that these coronaviruses, and everybody now knows coronaviruses, but we know other families of viruses that can also give yield to nasty new viruses, but let's now focus on coronavirus. So we could basically have designed antiviral drugs that are highly potent for all coronaviruses that we knew until now. So in November 2019, before we knew this new one, we knew 6 coronaviruses, 4 that cause mild disease, and then SARS and MERS. Based on that information, basically we could have developed potent drugs that we could have had on the shelf today. And the point is
and
that
do these viruses have
not to be a
similarities? Because we've been told that the Chinese doctors have been trying to use those antiviral drugs that are designed to cope with like Ebola, flu, or even AIDS to treat a novel coronavirus patient.
Yes.
Do you think it is a feasible way to tackle a new virus like this way?
Yeah. Yeah, well, right now we're left with sort of the option that we have to look into existing drugs like the Ebola drugs, remdesivir, who is basically being studied in Wuhan in a clinical study, and I hope that I hear my colleague saying that he is not too optimistic about the outcome, but let's see. So this anti-Ebola compound is targeting, let's call it the engine of Ebola, so the polymerase that is copying the genome, the genetic sequence. And by chance also this drug is basically not only blocking this engine, this enzyme of Ebola, but also that of coronavirus. So that's good, but that's of course not potent, really potent against coronavirus. So you have then the other drugs like chloroquine, the anti-malaria compound, which is also being tested and has been reported by the Chinese government to offer some benefit to patients. And then some of the anti-HIV drugs, because one of the protease inhibitors of HIV, there's some effect also on the coronavirus. We know that since long. But this is, let's say, all suboptimal activity. What we would need is highly potent antiviral drugs, and we know that that is possible. Look, for example, at HIV. We have highly potent drugs against HIV. You can, with just 1 pill a day, keep HIV under control. In China, there's a lot of hepatitis B. Hepatitis B can be kept under control. People do not develop symptoms with just 1 pill a day. So it is possible. The sad thing is that these wake-up calls of 2003, 2012 did not help for human mankind to prepare. And so, as I said, one is not, that one does not need to be a genius to understand that if we had highly potent drugs against coronaviruses in Wuhan in the first weeks of the epidemic, then you could have treated the most sick people. You could have treated preventively these medics. The doctors
we
and
don't know
nurses
the
that are taking
potency
care, so
of these
taking care
drugs
of this,
yet,
of these patients.
Professor
And
Nates,
also you could have,
but
yeah.
some of the drugs, as you mentioned, remdesivir is already put into clinical trial in Wuhan, and the result will come at the end of April. If it proved
Yes.
potent enough, do you think that will become a standard protocol for treatment around the world?
Well, I hope so. The question is, of course, I mean, how many patients will we have, and will the company, this is Gilead Sciences, a California-based company, but I understand that efforts are ongoing in China as well to produce the molecule, the drug, at risk, because you don't know, of course, as you just mentioned, what the clinical studies will yield. But I think it's important to prepare now for the future, just in case that we find, or that they find good data with the compound. So that may be a drug that may make a difference for those people that are most sick, but we have to wait. I mean, all these things have to be done in clinical studies, carefully controlled clinical studies, and it takes time. And so again, it would have been possible in the past to do it. We should have basically have a line of defense against such viruses. I mean, all countries are buying fighter planes and torpedoes and submarines to fight humans, or protect against humans. But as human mankind, we should basically prepare all together to fight against viruses that will come. And not only coronaviruses, we may see others coming in the future. If you see the total defense budget on this planet, then it would just take peanuts of that to develop a drug, let's say, against coronaviruses or against some other viruses. And we may still need to do it for coronas, because perhaps in 10 or 15 years we see a new coronavirus popping up, which has maybe it could be a SARS type that has 10% mortality. You don't want to see that. I'm not saying that will happen, but you should be prepared for the expected, unexpected, as I call it.
Exactly. We should prepare for the worst. Probably this is not the worst, but is already very bad in Europe. Italy is badly hit and is threatening to spread to the rest of Europe. Since you are talking to us from Brussels, are you worried about the medical facilities being overwhelmed in Europe, as once it is the case in Wuhan?
Well, I can only talk for Belgium, and I know that we have quite a bit of capacity, and I see that in other countries as well. The good thing is that in Wuhan and in China, you were taken by surprise, of course. Suddenly this new virus was there, and you had to act basically at the time that was coming. It's like, I mean, starting to fight a war at the time that you're just being invaded. So we are lucky here in Europe that in China things were done so diligently that we know how to test patients, and as explained by the colleague, I mean, in China, I mean, you could only start making the diagnostic test at the time, at the 12th of January, at the time that the genetic code became available. So we are a bit more lucky now, because you did all the difficult work, and so we know basically how to test the tests available. We can put people in quarantine, the contact tracing. We maybe have soon, well, as you say, end of April, some news on remdesivir. So it will not be good here, but perhaps, I mean, the time also that you gave us basically in China by putting cities like Wuhan in lockdown delayed things, and so it's now about 2.5 months into the epidemic. So I think we may be sort of happy that we had that time because of all the measures taken in China, but it's difficult to predict the future. Definitely there will be more and more patients, and measures will have to be taken, and will have to evaluate it every single day, and every day the situation may change.
As you said, Wuhan and China probably bought time for the world. Hopefully the world can use the time well. I want to talk a little bit about the vaccine development. So Professor Wang, Dr. Wang, the vaccine is considered by many people as a panacea for an epidemic like this, but also a lot of people are talking about this is probably 1 year and 1.5 years out. So why is it so long? Does it take us so long for us to have a vaccine?
I see. Well, vaccine development until it becomes a viable product have its course of
development path, such as you have to first design and then go through number one, safety and toxicity in the animal studies before you put it in human for the efficacy. Therefore, as long as you accumulate enough clinical data, we call that, and then you will go through the clinical statistic analysis until to reach the end point, you consider your product is efficacious, safe in a human.
But this is an emergency. Is there any way we can fast-track the process and make it quicker?
Oh, yes. Actually, it has been in a way that, for example, in the US FDA, it has been established policies for emergency use conditions so that you have a chance to emergency use of the testing materials into human body, make the fast tracking. As well, you have fast approval procedures as a policy. Then what I say that in a Chinese epidemic, the most possible option we choose is that we call that readiness of working streams, such as your reserve of your research teams, facilities, and then your supply chains and so forth. Speed up those manufacturing, testing, release of a vaccine as a viable product and a way that people are safe and efficacy.
And the Chinese authorities say the earliest time for a clinical trial is the end of April. And how longer does it take from clinical trial to the real manufacturing and distribution of vaccine?
Yeah, clinical trial stands for beginning of animal study for toxicity and safety before you put it on human beings. You don't want to kill people until you have confidence of that. That is also part of a clinical study. Until we have that, we test in human. Then right now we take a ride of widespread of the virus. We have actually sufficient clinical samples to test the efficacy, which I see that it's kind of opportunity to develop fast track. Of course, we have other policies, fast track, emergency use conditions. We have all the way to leeway that to fast speed up.
And we understand that every year there is a flu, and we do have flu vaccines, but it only works 30 to 50% to those who have been vaccinated. If we have a vaccine of novel coronavirus, how effective it will be? Well, the vaccine has its path of it, like any other vaccines which have been proven in the past. Not to talk about the massive production, as long as those vaccines are available, people will get control with from population infections. Therefore, eventually, there are opportunities which have a good vaccine. Hard to project exactly the percentage is, but the good thing is that once if we have effective vaccine in a human trial, we will slow down the population infection and eventually to upbuild that end the epidemic. But there's also the possibility when the vaccine is out, the virus already petered out. Actually, this has happened in the past. For example, Dr. Yang just mentioned about that 17 years ago, which we were all experienced of that. The thing is that coordination policies, in other words, I use a word called resources reserve. In other words, even though we have epidemic ends, we will learn the lesson, as the professor said from Brazil, that we have to have coordination, get that ongoing. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Wang, Dr. Yang, and Professor Nates for your wonderful insights into this. Thank you. You've been watching Dialogue here on CGTN. I'm Joe in Beijing. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.